Boy in Green. Chapter 5. 1.5 years later. Martin held a torch as Peter crawled through the dirt, digging at what seemed to be an endless hole. Tink was ahead of Peter, leading the way, telling him to hurry up. He grumbled because she was tiny enough to fit through the cracks. "There it is!" Tink exclaimed, "You can see it shining through the dirt." Peter reached it and used his fingers to dig at the glowing spot. All this time, the moon of the earth was underground, in the mountains no less. "Oh, come on, no one has ever seen this type of stone, give them a break. They've only heard riddles about it." "Yeah, and that only hinted that it had to be dark," he complained, but he stopped when his fingers touched a surprisingly smooth surface. He lifted the white glowing stone out of the dirt and stared at it. From outside the small tunnel, Martin yelled, "Hey, did you find it?" Peter remembered himself and shouted back, "Yeah." Then he crawled out backward as Tink followed him. Martin, a tall centaur, stared down at Peter and grinned. "You did find it. It's more beautiful than I thought it would be." Peter smiled up at Martin, "Hey, thanks for your help. I don't think I would have found the stone without you. You were the only one who actually knew anything about this." "That's because my ancestors were obsessed with breaking their enchantment. They researched for decades trying to find a magical object strong enough to turn them human again. Besides, you helped me get out of that mess with the royal family." "It was no problem, I got mistreated too when I was younger." "Are your people still trying to find a way out of the enchantment?" Martin chuckled as he clopped his way out of the cave with Peter and Tink behind him. "Well, it's a very long process that no one wants to deal with unless, of course, they have fallen deeply in love with another race. Otherwise, most of us are content the way we are, seeing as we were born this way, unlike the originals who were cursed. Don't tell Amishi about this process, they would consider it black magic." "I promise I won't. I kinda avoided that kingdom altogether, but I think they have the best intentions. And I even had a run-in with its princess while she was traveling to Derwin." "Really?" "I've heard she will be a just ruler, but she still looks down upon magic. However, so far witches and wizards haven't done anything to send Amishi all out of whack. There's only been a few things they get blamed for." He turned to Peter as they came out of the cave and into the quiet night. "You haven't run into any witches or wizards, have you?" "Not that I can say," Peter said, then Zell came out of the trees and over to them. Peter held a hand to Martin, then Peter hovered in the air so he was the same height as Martin. They shook hands as Martin told Peter, "It was good to meet you, Peter Pan. I hope after this war with the merfolk, the world above will be able to join us." "As do I. Now I must be off. I only have a while longer before the tree dies. And because it took so long to find this one, the tree has gotten to its breaking point. Tell me if you ever see a flying ship go by." Apparently, Hook lied about freeing all the pixies. Surprise, surprise. Peter glided himself over Zell and landed on her back. Tink flew and took her spot on top of Zell's head. In the side satchel, a fuzzy little head poked up. It was Evan. The Auburn was now at the age where he could change into just about any bear. However, he was still working on changing sizes. He would get there someday, but for now, he stuck to being a panda bear. With a wave to Martin, Peter shot off to the sky on Zell with his other two companions. They hurried their way over to the great pixie tree. The last time they visited, the tree was rotting away again. The Star of the Sea couldn't heal it by itself for long, and since not all the pixies were back, they couldn't help in healing the tree either. As for Captain James Hook, there had only been reports of him capturing fairies and draining their magic. Not only that, but Hook was also under the impression that if he killed all the elves, he would gain their years of youth. Peter wished he took the captain down when he first met up with him, then all the magic Hook stole would be released and lives would have been spared. By the time it was midday, Peter reached the tree. It was close to dying, and if it did, it would mean magic was gone and Hook owned everything that remained of it. The least Hook could have done was do a little research on the tree. If he left it alone, he could have possessed even more magic. Then Peter wouldn't be running against the clock and instead could focus on hunting Hook down. Peter ran to the tree, and at its roots where the star of the sea was, he placed the moon of the earth beside it. The tree burst with energy again, but near the roots and some branches, they could still see it was dying. That was a close one. We should find the son of the sky as soon as possible, or at least where Hook is so we can take him down. We only have half a year left. Tink told Peter as they headed back to Zell since they didn't have time to spare. Peter was about to say something, but then a familiar voice rang from above, the voice of the Creator. You have done well, brave one, now only one remains. You will need to find it soon if the tree is going to live. And all that remains is finding the missing pixies so the tree can produce the magic needed. I will, Peter said as he hopped on Zell, ready to end this once and for all. Good, said the Creator and through the wind. Then he felt her presence leave. As he was about to ride off, Peter heard something else. Again, it was a voice that sounded familiar to him, but it wasn't the voice of the Creator or any of the pixies. Instead, it reminded Peter of his long days in the service of Sir Dawn. Slowly, Peter trotted Zell over to the noise and lay on the other side of the tree. The closer he got, the more voices he heard. And every single one he could recall in his mind. Their bickering voices were something he never forgot over the years. He got off Zell's back and walked around the tree with Tink by his side and Evan in the satchel. Hello twins, Curly, Toodles, Slightly, and Nibs, it has been a long time, hasn't it? Now just why are you not in the castle? Peter asked slowly, but his voice still caught them by surprise. Curly pointed at Peter and started making a strange noise like a banging drum. Peter. How are you? Nibs hushed Curly and said so all of them could hear, isn't it obvious, he's been doing the work for us. He approached Peter and as he did, Peter worried Nibs would start a fight, but then he grinned. I suppose I was wrong about you being a lost boy. Guess that means, the real lost boys are us. We are at your service. That is if you'll let us make up for the past. Slightly's mouth fell open. He couldn't believe Nibs was pledging himself to Peter. It just didn't make any sense whatsoever to him. Nibs was the leader, what changed his mind now? Nibs, what the heck, man? It was only a few seconds ago you were saying that we had this in the bag. Again, Nibs hushed the boys. He looked at Peter, and we all heard the voice of the Creator. Besides, we got kicked out and were following in Peter's footsteps when we came here. So, what do you say, Peter? Peter, though a little concerned about agreeing to this deal, took Nibs' hand and shook it. I'd love some help. I need one more stone to heal the tree. The son of the sky, but I haven't a clue to where the stone is. Then Peter eyed them, so you all got kicked out? Toodles nodded, mostly glaring at Curly and Slightly. Yep, because the king finally had proof of what they did to you, and all of us got punished for it. And when we went to that village you lived in with what's-his-face? Mr. Hath, Peter corrected. Yeah, him, he told us about where you went and the quests Lilia gave you. That's why Nibs and Slightly wanted to come, so they could prove themselves because they didn't believe the princess or the Creator would choose you. I still don't. Slightly shouted. Nibs sighed, well I do. And after all that night training, I realized it was more than knowing how to swing a sword. I feel bad that I picked on you for a reason as silly as the race of your parents. Now tell us how we can find this son of the sky. Peter thought about this, looking to the top left. What was a good place to start? Probably somewhere bright and grand like the actual sun, but the only place Peter could think of was this island by the tree. If the son of the sky was on this island though, It probably should already be healing the tree, so it must be somewhere else. His eyes brightened as the light popped inside his head. I know. I can go talk to Princess Celilia. She'll know where it is. There was silence from everyone. Then Nibs placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't you remember? You can't go anywhere near the princess, Pan. Plus she has been scolded by her father about getting married soon. Peter's heart fell flat. Tink didn't like this expression on his face, and she didn't like this princess that Peter so carelessly named his Pegasus after. No one should make Peter look so shattered. Then Peter gave a cheerful grin, and while he did, his feet hovered above the ground, scaring all the boys. I'll go anyway. We have to hurry. Curly pointed at the empty space between Peter's feet and the ground as he spat out random words. Soon the chubby boy couldn't take it and passed out cold. The twins looked down at Curly and back at each other and shrugged their shoulders. It wasn't a new thing Curly did, so it didn't bother anyone much. The rest of the boys watched as Peter calmed himself and rested his feet back on the ground. He guessed it was something new that he probably needed to explain to them. Flying without wings was certainly a new thing for lots of people. The Creator, she gave me the power over wind, so now I can fly, but when I'm going long distances with food, then I go with my Pegasus. Peter purposely left out his Pegasus's name so he wouldn't get teased about it. Cool, the twins both said as they revealed their wings and began to flap them. They always liked showing them off, but with magic draining, they didn't want to waste any of what they had left by simply flying around. Nibs sat down in the dirt with a stick in his hand and said, all right, let's make Peter a solid plan so he can reach the princess. Tink's face turned a hot red as Peter sat down with the rest of the group. They didn't need the princess's help. They could find it on their own. She grabbed Peter's hat, and he glanced over at her. You look red, Tink. Are you okay? Perhaps you would feel better if you had Evan with you. Peter walked to where Evan hid and pulled the panda bear out of the satchel. Gently, Peter put Evan down on the ground. Evan panted as he ran around the circle of sitting boys and the passed-out Curly. Although Tink didn't want to have Evan out, seeing the Auburn act all crazy made her forget about stopping Peter's plan to see Celilia. Evan woke Curly up by licking the boy's face as Tink shooed the bear away from him. Curly looked at Evan with a smile, even though Curly got a shocker from waking up to his face all sticky. Is that what I think it is? Curly asked, an Auburn? Peter nodded, then his face saddened as he remembered what happened to the rest. He's the only one left. A gulp caught in Nibs' throat as he yelled, what devil killed the rest of them? The same person who stole the magic and the pixies, Captain James Hook, Peter answered. Right, then what are we waiting for? Let's get the princess and take that dude down. He's going to regret messing with the Aubryns. Slightly shouted as he slammed his fist into the dirt. Nibs smiled at how easily Slightly changed his mind. They began to plan Peter's way into the castle and up to the princess's room. Peter would have to go during the night and avoid getting spotted by the guards in the towers. After that, Peter would fly to the window and tap on it so Celilia or someone else would check it out, then he could fly in and talk to her. Easier said than done, but if need be, the twins said they would help Peter out by being a distraction. What about the rest of us? Curly asked Nibs, wanting to do something important. Nibs tried to look for something that would convince Curly that staying on this island would be just as useful. We need to stay here because, well, Evan, the tree, and the pixies need protection with all the Aubryns dead. Slightly pulled his knight's training sword off his back. That's right, this tree will need to be guarded against that awful Captain Hook. Curly grew excited by this as he stood happily. Yeah, and we should give our group a name, but what should it be? The Lost Boys, Nibs said simply. Everyone nodded, taking a liking to the name even though it started out as a joke for Peter. Right on, the twins shouted, fists pumping in the air, let's do this.